Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. Hello, my dear children. This is me, your English teacher. My dear children, we have already finished up to page number 21 in Gulliver's Travels book. So up to now, can you remember the story? How Gulliver came to Lilliput, how he lived in Lilliput, his life at Blefuscu. Doesn't matter. Teacher is going to tell a small summary of the story you have learned so far. Before moving with the teacher's explanations about the story, I think you all have read the story up to page number 42. A Journey to Lilliput. A Journey to Lilliput. Chapter 1. How I Came to Lilliput. My dear children, Gulliver left the school when he was 17 years old. Then he went to a ship called Antelope, which was sailing under Captain Pritchard. One day, on their way to East Indies, a great wind caught them. Ship cracked on a rock and sank in the sea. But Gulliver was carried to an unknown place by the wind. He walked more than half a kilometer, but he could not see any houses or people. He got very tired and fell into a deep sleep on that night. When he woke up, he was unable to move. Then he found that his arms and feet were held down to the ground. Thousands of strings had been passed across his body so that he could not move. Although he heard noises around him, he could not see anything. A man less than 15 centimeters high, who was dressed like a soldier, came over his body. He got surprised and gave a great cry. One little brave man came and shouted, "Hekina Diggle," and the others replied, "Hekina, Diggle, Hekina," but he did not understand. My dear children, in his attempt to get free from strings, he hurt a lot. So he thought that the wisest thing to do was lie quietly till night. Quite later, he saw some men were building a wooden table, large enough for 4 little people to stand upon. When the table was ready, 4 of the little people got up into it, and one man started to speak, moving his hands. He did not know the words, but from his hands and voice he understood what he meant. Gulliver put his hands to his mouth, showing that he wanted food. By king's order they brought food for him. Then he asked something to drink. He drank 2 pots of milk, and when he asked for a third, they showed that he had drunk all the milk. After he had eaten, a person came with a letter from the king ordering that he must be carried to the city. The food he had eaten made him sleepy. They had mixed sleeping powder with the food. Gulliver was carried to the city by a cart to meet the king. They have arranged an old church, which was the largest building in the whole country, for him to use as his house. One of his feet was set in a great ring on the end of many strong strings, so that he could only walk about a meter away from his door. Chapter 2. How I Lived in Lilliput. Early next day he came out of his house and looked around. The city was like a picture in a child's book. Soldiers stayed to keep the people from coming too close to him or hurting him. But while he was sitting on the ground, some of the people shot him, captain ordered to catch those men and throw to him. He held 5 of them in one hand and took the other and raised him as if he wanted to beat him, but he released those 6. People were very pleased at his gentleness. King got to know how he treated the 6 men, so he ordered 6 wise men to teach him the Lilliputian. My dear children, can you remember? In about 3 weeks, he could speak quite well. They began to talk to each other. They asked Gulliver to show all the things he carried with him. He showed all the things he had with him. King sent some orders to him, saying that if he would keep to this, they would let him free. Chapter 3. How I Made War on Blefuscu. One day a great man in Lilliput came to Gulliver and asked him to help to win the war against the Biganders. Gulliver, with the permission of the king, got connected with Lilliput soldiers to defeat the Blefuscu. In half an hour he came to Blefuscu across the sea. He took his strings and passed it round the ships, which were settled at the bay of Blefuscu, and pulled 40 of the largest ships of the Blefuscu after him. The king was so pleased at this and asked him to bring the rest of the ships from Blefuscu with an inferior intention, and it was rejected by. My dear children, the king of Blefuscu sent a letter to Gulliver, thanking and asking him to visit their country. According to king's order, Gulliver should not leave the country without king's words, but he decided to visit Blefuscu. Gulliver got to know that king got angry and decided to kill Gulliver. So in that night he decided to leave Lilliput. Then he came to Blefuscu. He was greatly welcomed by the king and the queen. There was no house large enough for him, so that he had to put his coat over him and sleep out in the field. Chapter 4. How I Came Home Again. 3 days later, when he was walking on the northeast of the island, he saw something look like a boat a long way out to sea. He went quickly back to the city and asked the king to send 20 of his largest ships and 2,000 men to help him to get the boat to land. The boat was quite unbroken and ready for sailing. He asked the king to give him food and other things so that he could go back to his own country. After a few days, everything was ready, and he took 6 cows to show the people in his own country. On the 3rd day, he saw a ship. That was an English ship. With the help of that ship, he came to England, and he sold some cows he took from Blefuscu for a lot of money. My dear children, now we are going to start the story that is allocated for the 2nd term. Gulliver in Brobdingnag, from page number 22 to 42. My dear children, you have been informed to read the whole story allocated for this term from the previous presentation. I hope you all have read the story. So now Titi is going to do the summary. Chapter 1. How I Came to Brobdingnag. Gulliver was rich after his journey to Lilliput, and he bought a house in England. Few months later, he went to sea again. One day, on their way to Indies to buy and sell things, a great wind caught them. It carried them to an island. Although they had enough food, they needed fresh water. So captain of the ship sent some men along with the Gulliver to look for some fresh water. Then what happened? After a time, when Gulliver returns back towards the boat was not on the beach. A huge creature was walking after them in the sea, but he could not catch the boat. Gulliver turned and ran. My dear children, then what happened? He walked along a wide road, but it was not a road. He was in a field of corn, and corn was 12 meters high. That was not a road, but a narrow way for huge men walking across the field. Huge creatures were cutting down the corn all around him. One of the men saw Gulliver and took him up. Gulliver put his hands together and asked him to not to kill. The farmer carried him carefully to his house and gave food. He ate hungrily. That pleased the people around the table, the farmer and his wife, 3 children, and farmer's old mother. Farmer had a daughter. She taught Gulliver their language. So in few days he was able to ask for anything he wanted. The whole country knew Gulliver as Gulliver, which means a very children. Farmer's daughter looked after him every minute of every day and night while he was in that country, which they called as Brobdingnag. He called her as Glumdalclitch, my little keeper. People in the village heard that the farmer has found a very small creature in the field, so they came to see him. The headman of the village got surprised. They spoke for a long time about this little creature. They planned to show Gulliver on the next market day in the nearest town. Glumdalclitch was very unhappy about this. She was afraid that some of the country people would take him on their hands and hurt him. The farmer took no notice of this girl when she prayed him not to show. My dear children, the next day farmer took him to the nearest town and showed him to about 30 people at one time. They asked many questions from Gulliver. What is your name? Where do you come from? Why are you so small? Like that, they asked many questions from Gulliver. People laughed at his answers. That great noise hurt his ears and made him feel weak. The farmer wanted more and more money, and he showed him not only on market days, but every day at his farm. Little girl Glumdalclitch was very unhappy as she saw him getting weaker and Chapter 2. How I Met the King and the Queen. The farmer thought that Gulliver was going to die because he was so ill. So instead of showing him less, farmer wanted to make as much money as he could before his death. The farmer began to show Gulliver in the big cities where the king had his palace. After they arrived there, a palace servant came with a message from the king to bring Gulliver to the palace. Can you remember what happened next? Yes, Gulliver was taken to the palace. By whom? By the farmer and his daughter. Queen was so gentle to Gulliver. She asked some questions about his country and his travels. Queen asked whether Gulliver likes to stay in the palace. He said that if farmer set him free, he would gladly serve in the palace. So farmer was asked to sell him along with his daughter. Glumdalclitch herself was very happy. Then Queen carried Gulliver to the king and ordered him to tell about himself. At first the king thought he might be a very well-made doll or plaything with clockwork inside him. But he saw that could not be true. 3 wisest men in the country predicted that Gulliver was a thing that was not planned but a mistake. So he spoke to the king, saying that I am not a thing. I came from a country where there are several million men and women, all in my height. He told the king great many things about England and the other countries of Europe. The king was very keen to hear from Gulliver and asked the queen to arrange a safe place for the little creature to live in. After 3 weeks, he got a wooden room about 5 meters high, 5 meters long, and 5 meters wide. Every Wednesday, which was their day of rest, the king and all his family had dinner together. Then the king liked to have Gulliver near him, so that he could ask many questions from Gulliver. The king was a great ruler of understanding. He often ordered his people to bring Gulliver to him. The king wanted to hear more about Gulliver's country. He told the king about the English Parliament, which makes law for the country, history of the country, inventions of the scientist, and so many. Chapter 3. How I Came Home Again. When Gulliver had been 2 years in the country, the king and the queen made a journey to the towns and cities in the south. They took Gulliver and Glumdalclitch with them. He travelled in his own box. They arrived near the sea at last. They were very tired, so Gulliver wanted to sleep for a time. Glumdalclitch helped to shut the windows and doors of his box so that he could sleep well and safe. After a few hours, he suddenly got woke up. Something had taken hold of the ring in the top of the box. He felt the box is going up and up in the air and then along very fast. One of the great seabirds of the country was carrying him away. 2 birds were fighting to wrench the box. My dear children, what happened next? It dropped the box. There was a great noise and then darkness as his box fell into the sea. Then it rose and floated. His box floated for several days. He was wondering whether he is going to die of cold, or for want of food and water, or because of great wind. He heard a sound of something hard striking his box. There was a sound of something moving the ring on the top of his box. Then he heard that somebody shouting, "Is anybody here?" Gulliver shouted with all his effort, "Yes, please save me." He was rescued by his people, and he had to tell all the things about the country in which he was a small creature. My dear children, that is the story of the Gulliver in Broad. You have finished up to page number 42 in Gulliver's Travels book. Next part of the story will be done in the 3rd term. Hope you have enjoyed the story. Have an awesome day.